Writing is the only mode of communication wherein we can be very candid, rather speech. Be very cautious while you read a poem. You have to know the synopsis, you have to know the theme of the poem along with the name of the poet or an author also. Elucidate is nothing but elaborate or thematically represent the poem. Just that, what do you find that is essential in a paper or in the poem? Season's greeting. Out of all God's creation, man is termed to be the wisest of all. It is because man is enabled with speech and writing, the talent which imbibes as human being that makes him stand aloof from all other creation. Writing in the world of art occupies a very important stature. Writing occupies an important place in the world of literature. So much so that the writing etiquette is vague and oceanic in nature. What I am teaching today is just a draw pertaining to your examination. Going deeper would confuse you. So I'll be very subtle, I'll be very plainly explaining about the writing etiquette so that you don't lose marks in terms of examination. Very of time, students normally come up to me asking for marks. Nor it can be any other way around wherein they have presumption stating that, or they hold prejudice towards a lecturer stating that English teachers are very conjuice. They are very stingy in providing us marks. It's because there is something that they are expecting it from you and your writing. And that's where it lies. It lies in writing etiquette. Not very much pertaining to this would be explained here because I have told you it's very oceanic. Writing etiquette is vague and oceanic. So much so that I can explain you that is pertaining to your examination and interest. So what makes writing etiquette so very special? Because writing is the only mode of communication wherein we can be very candid, rather speech. So we are introduced to the notable personalities in the world of literature, and starting from Chaucer, known for his Canterbury Tales, William Shakespeare, known as a very famous playwright, Kuvempu eventually acquiring all the qualities that imbibes to be a poet. And not only such, there are many to mention. Not rebuking them though, it's not an humiliation while I don't mention William Wordsworth, William Blake, Shelley, Coleridge. There are many writers. There are many writers who have placed or who have played a very prominent role in terms of literature that occupies an important stature in the texts also. And here it takes us to the world of art. Writing is an art. It doesn't matter what you write, it all matters how. How do you jot down your feelings? There are many novelists who have come across and you have read the lines also. You might think that the novel is held to be appreciated. It's worth thousands of applauds all over. It's worth of appreciation and triumph. Only because the way they write, the way they put up their emotions is worthwhile saluting. That's why we term it as writing is an art. And we can acquire with all talent, with all necessity conceptions and what not. Anybody can write anything, but it takes a lot of efforts to write something as an art, and that's what I term it as writing is an art. No Tom, Dick and Harry can pen down and term it as an art. So you're introduced to the methodology simultaneously. Pertaining to your exams, I would want you to fall under this methodology and score high. Of course, for each and every of the subjects, you will have certain restrictions, but in English is only the subject wherein it demands your compassion, it demands your concentration and diligence, rather any restrictions. So let's start with an introduction. These are the quintessential points or the takeaways that you will have to remember. First is introduction. Synopsis, we don't term it as summary, it's rather synopsis. Conclusion, wherein you will be very happy in concluding, and critical appreciation or critical analysis. We can even term it as analysis. And everything of such which seems to be very petty or in miniature sort, these play a very important role in grading you high. And that's how we term it as a proper methodology. It's not only a methodology, it's a proper methodology to fetch you grades. And when I say grade, I mean it. I mean it. Next. So what is that you have? The first impression is always the best impression. Let's start with introduction. You will be introduced into the world. How are you introduced? By your name. While you want your name to be identified, even your writing has to be the same. So I term it as the first impression is the best impression. Every time the first impression has to be the best impression. You cannot take any turns on that. So how can you make it the best impression? You have to give the side heading or subtitle as introduction. Give a side heading as introduction, underline, and then you start your writing. And how do you have to start? You have to start with the name of the poet or an author. You will have to start with a poet or an author. Very simple. Be very cautious while you read a poem. You have to know the synopsis, you have to know the theme of the poem along with the name of the poet or an author also. You cannot skip, you cannot get confused with the poet's name or the author's name. It's very, very important. The way you cannot forget your name, because name is your identity. In the same way, while you relate a poem in writing, you have to relate the author or a poet into it. And that's how your poet can fetch you marks. Next. Continuing with the title of the poem or a phrase. You know who's the poet. So what is that piece of writing? It's you have to start with the title. Only followed, the poet's name or an author's name is followed by the title of the poem or a prose. Very, very easy. I don't want his father's name, I don't want his mother's name, his schooling, his hospital, where was he born, who was this doctor, who was this nurse, nothing such. I just want the poet and related quintessential points. Next, you will have to explain the title, and that's why we term it as titular expression. For example, if you're studying about the schoolboy, what is a titular expression? What does the title state? The title says that we are studying about a schoolboy. In a title, not everything is framed. But what is the theme? The theme is agony of the schoolboy. We are talking about that schoolboy who is in morose of going to school. And you will know the further of the substance. So you will have to explain the title, and that's what we call as titular expression. Bitten pieces of expressions will take you nowhere. If you think that English is very complicated, you have to delve deeper. Because as I asserted, with bitten pieces we cannot triumph. This is your first step and you will have to afford to one. Next, 5 wise lines. When you add the poet's name followed by the title, and while you give an expression on the title, it becomes very clear that you know the poem well. So there it becomes the first impression, and that will fetch you a best marks as well, and that's a promise. And here, while I talk about 5 wise lines, all these points will give you this result. I promise. All these things will give you these results, and that is 5 wise lines. I have been explaining you incessantly. What is that? The poet followed by the title and the theme of the title. What does the title imply? What is the significance of the title? You might be asked, even in the poetic representation also, you might be asked to represent the significance of the title. Be very wise enough, as explained. Incessantly writing the same points will take you nowhere. So introduction should be very crisp. Make it compact, and also it should be very, very meaningful. So the best impression is the first impression, or the first impression is the best impression. Either of those, the other way around also will do. And next, as introduction is to the best impression, so is synopsis to the creative writing. Synopsis will bridge a connection between your thoughts and the poet's. You cannot write it as summary. Summary is nothing but you're just paraphrasing. But when I say synopsis, you have extracted the juice from the poem or a prose. Now you will have to add your essence onto it. And how can you do that? This is how. Open the lines with a quotation. You will have to learn the first two lines by rote and you will have to jot down within a quotation. Coming with an example, just think that this is amidst the quotation. This is the first line of the poem. This line will help me connect the rather. The latter of the lines will be connected to this. So you will put this amidst the quote. When I say the quotation, it's the quotation marks. Double inverted commas is known as the quotation marks, and you have to underline the lines that you have written and only followed by the first two opening lines of the poem. When I talk about with a quotation, you will have to place the first two opening lines within the quote as it goes with my former explanation. And next, set them inside the quotation marks, and you will have to set them inside the quotation mark. Very clear, be very compact, or you have to be very composed while you write. Make it very crisp. I believe in quality rather quantity. Quantity can give you pages and pages, but while you want to find something very relevant, that's where you are apprehensive about, and every teacher would want to look the qualitative answer rather quantity. So here you have to be very precise, underline what it is meant. You have to underline the quotation. Explain the theme. It's not you are explaining the poem as it is. You have to explain the theme. Theme, given an example with much of the simpler example, money madness. While we talk about money madness, what is the theme? The theme is we all human beings, or we human beings are the puppets in the hands of money. Money is our master. Money is our best friend, and money is our worst enemy. So that's the theme. You have to extract the essence and put it down here. So that becomes the theme. You have to explain the theme and not the synopsis in a paragraph. Next, use figurative speech. Every poem is constructed in a frame of figurative speech. You will have simile, you will have metaphor, you will have personification, you will have alliteration, you will have hyperbole, you will have synecdoche, oxymoron, repetition, much more. You will have to use seldom of those. You will have to use 2 or 3 figurative speech to grades. In the sense that while you start drawing, for example, after you finish drawing, after there is an illustration, you start to paint. Only colorful picture will attract. In the same way, this adds color to your writing. You give all the figurative speech that is ensembled in the poem, which is very apt. Pick that out and drop it here, and that makes you a very bright answer. Next, elucidate only to the point. If they have asked you what is the message of the poem Money Madness, you cannot write everything. You have to put up in your own words as to say what is that you understand from the poem. Be very crisp, to the point, apt, and elucidate. Elucidate is nothing but elaborate or thematically represent the poem. So given a very good example again, I will go with Money Madness, wherein how the theme explains one by one. How money can be your best friend, how can that turn out to be a worst enemy also. So that's where you end the synopsis. So everything of crisp makes 1 point for you, and that 1 point can fetch you good marks as well. And next, and coming to the conclusion, introduction, synopsis will pave a way to conclusion. They bridge out down to conclusion only because the time you were introduced to the introduction, which terms as the first impression is the best impression, even conclusive part also has something to state, and that's sometimes the last impression can be the best. Every time we see a paper, every time we write examination, we run short of words. That's why we say read more and more, come out with vocabulary and glossary. Start reading novels, start reading storybooks, comics, be it anything. And that's where you can find creativity. A teacher can teach you anything. It's only left to you if you have to read, if you have to learn. Just the example, we can draw a horse towards the water, but it's left to the horse if it has to drink. In the same way, we can extend a helping hand the any way forward you want. You're just a touch away to understand what is the importance of education and especially writing, which takes a turn onto your academic life. And short of these will help you to fetch one. So here, coming to the conclusion, now to move forward again, choose 2 lines of the closing paragraph. In the introduction, it was the first 2 lines. In synopsis also, you can take mid of the lines and place it there as a quotation. That can be your choice. But I've told you figurative speech is compelled. Here, choose 2 lines of the closing paragraph or the closing lines. The last 2 lines of the poem. What is the message that it spreads? Place them inside the quotation as it goes with introduction. You have to place them inside the quotation. Briefly explain the motive. Motive is no different from theme. You have to send a message. You have to be very crucial enough to understand what is the poem all about. And then you will conclude. Conclude with a positive mode. Whenever you conclude, you can't say that I did not like this poem. This poem says that, this poem says, be it how much ever catastrophic the poem is, or a play is, or a story is. You will have to have the sensibility to write it in a positive way. Put every tone in such a way that the reader has not to be apprehensive, rather he or she has to be excited in reading your answer. And that's where you will end up being a good writer. Next. Very important, and taking up to the critical analysis. This is my favorite part because you're independent in stating your assumption. Enough is enough, wherein you grab others' assumption and state yours. Now it's time, buckle yourself, pull up your socks, wherein you have your own sense and sensibility to read and write. Whenever you're in a movie theater, either you will like the movie or you will dislike. If you like, you have comments. If you dislike, also you will have comments. That's nothing exactly than critical analysis or critical appreciation. But make sure you cannot be rude in writing this. It's just that what do you find that is essential in a paper or in the poem? You will have to opine personally. And that's where the message is. Writing is our strength. We all are enabled to writing. And that's where we say that your strength lies in your writing. How? What sort of writing? You cannot just scribble. You will have to be wise and sensible. And the next point, you will have to examine the work critically and analyze accordingly. Whenever you read a poem, you will have to analyze in the perception of the author, in the perception of yours, and then you will jot it down. So what is that we have learned? Very simple in thought. We have 4 methodology. One is introduction, synopsis, conclusion, and critical appreciation or critical analysis. I promise you that these will fetch you very good marks if you have entitled, underlined, and you have explained accordingly. Because writing is an art that lasts forever. Just like we have European and Western writers, we have notable personalities known for their Indian writing in English. Arundhati Roy, Chetan Bhagat, Devdutt Patnaik, and Aravind Adiga. Who next? There can be many, there are many, because they have eventually taken up writing as an art. So that's what for you. Always remember, writing is not just a desperacy. Writing is an art. Here's Vidhyaashram for you, standard retained on learning. I'll see you soon. Take care.